Hello, true believers. This is Doc Hogg, and welcome to episode 92 of Comics and Variety. If you like this channel, please do subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. And for the sake of YouTube's search algorithm, please do hit the like button. Okay, before I get to the main part of this video, I want to mention again that the sign-up page is live for my forthcoming comic book Tilt, a story about a young woman named Jennifer Poehler who has the power to make the characters in a deck of cards come alive and must use them to exact revenge on mobsters who murdered her father. I'm going to start sending out updates tomorrow. Specifically, I'll be telling you more about the live stream I'm planning on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with my colorist Lost Lenore, a.k.a. Lenore King, a.k.a. the Karaoke Queen. She will be coloring a page of Tilt on that show, and I will be letting you know which page in that update. So do sign up. The link is in the description below. Today I want to address the Comicsgate notion that we should keep politics out of comics. What does that mean exactly? And I want to address that because I came across this video the other day on a YouTube channel called Actual Context with the title, Marvel Comics is Supposed to be Progressive, Debunking Comicsgate. Now, I'm not going to actually address whether Marvel is supposed to be left-wing. Instead, I just want to talk about this part of his video.
Marvel was called The World Outside Your Window by the original creators, and was meant to have relatable people who happen to become superheroes. Stories that can exist within our world in real cities. Well, New York City mostly, but with characters representing contemporary styles and cultures and attitudes. This also includes politics. If you don't believe me, go check out Scott at NerdSync's video on Captain America and the Politics of Comics for just a maddeningly fantastic video about the history of this. If Cap punching Hitler on his first issue's cover isn't political, I'll eat my helmet. If you Google Stan Lee's soapbox, you can find a lot of old scans from Silver Age Marvel Comics where Stan would address his foundational beliefs in tolerance and using contemporary socio-political themes. These concepts are in the very fabric of Marvel heroes and stories. So if you're against politics and social consciousness in Marvel Comics, you're against Stan the Man, and in my opinion, that makes you a big old piece of shit. But objectively, it means you have no idea what you're talking about when you say Marvel shouldn't have politics or themes of race in them.
Now, again, there's a lot I could say about that, but let's just keep the focus on the claim that Comicsgaters say that there should be no politics in comics. And I will also say that I'm giving him and other social justice warriors the benefit of the doubt on this point. I'm taking them at face value, and I'll explain why that is at the end of this video. But is that what Comicsgate really means? You know, absolutely no politics in comic books. Well, you can kind of see where people like SJWs and others can, get that idea. For example, here is Adam Post on the YouTube channel Narwhal Books very recently.
Now, firstly, when you're getting into publishing and you're going to publish with the Comicsgate guys, a huge resource, Comicsgate people. If you believe in what Comicsgate people believe in, quality stories, no politics in the comics.
Adam, as you may know, did the comic book College of the Dead, and just to let you know, Volume 2 will be funding soon. But he's saying keep the politics out of comics, and that's he's saying it, in a pretty straightforward way here. But Adam might mean something a bit different. That is, what he's saying here is a shorter version of something that is, more nuanced. And so I asked Adam about this. I mean, when you say keep politics out of comics, do you actually mean no politics in any way, period? And that includes avoiding political themes in a story, or a story that is a political allegory. So, for example, Mark Miller's comic book Civil War, which is not just an allegory about the Patriot Act, in fact, but is also a pro-gun control allegory, that wouldn't be acceptable. Even though to Miller's credit, he wrote a good story, the characters were interesting, all the things that make a good comic book story, he did those. But since it is a political allegory, it violates the standards of Comicsgate if, the no politics standard, if that is in fact our standard. Or does keep politics out of comics mean this? Emphasize good story, interesting characters, and beautiful art first. Do not push a political agenda at the expense of those. So you can have political themes or make a comic book that is a political allegory, but those need to come second to the elements that make a good comic book. So Mark Miller's Civil War would be just fine under this standard, but something like Marvel Rising would not. And why not? Well, because there are loads of plot holes in this in Marvel Rising, because the writer is clearly more concerned with pushing a political agenda than with good storytelling. It is also reflected in that the female heroes really have no weaknesses. They are largely Mary Sues, as we say, while the male characters are always fearful and or incompetent. That makes for very boring characters, but it does support the SJW pro-radical feminist and anti-patriarchal view of the world. And you have this art on the cover that is terrible. God, that's just awful. And so when Comicsgaters say keep politics out of comics, we mean get that stuff out of comic books. But what is the standard? Well, here was Adam's response to my questions. Quote, it is the simplest version of it. No pro-Trump comics, no social agenda representation comics. People of every race and gender are fine. Just make the comics to fit the people, not their skin color or sexual identity. So that kind of straddles both of the standards. The comment about no pro-Trump comics seems to fit the first standard. I think he's referring here to Timothy Lim's One Trump Man, which is a fairly pro-Trump comic book. But it was also something of a spoof, and I thought it was quite entertaining. But nevertheless, that suggests no politics at all. But the second part would seem to allow for some politics in comics. Just don't let the agenda come at the expense of the story. And I think that's what he means in that last clause, not their skin color or sexual identity. In other words, if you're writing comic books where all of the minority and gay characters are smart and good, and the white heterosexuals are all Neanderthals, you're now pushing an agenda at the expense of writing good comic books. Now, I wonder if Adam's response is representative of Comicsgate in the sense that, we haven't, as a movement, we haven't fully established what we mean by no politics in comics. Now, I come down firmly on the second standard. I think political themes and allegories are fine, as long as the elements of a good comic book are emphasized first. But, again, I don't think it's clear exactly what we mean by that, what we mean by no politics in comics. And I think it is important that Comicsgaters start to discuss it, because at some point there will be some Comicsgate creators, in fact there already have been, like Timothy Lim, who will want to do a comic book with political themes or as a political allegory. I mean, I may want to do that at some point. And what is our standard then? Would that in fact be Comicsgate, or would you have to call it a non-Comicsgate type project? And that matters because there's a lot of folks involved in Comicsgate who actively promote on Twitter and elsewhere comic books that are part of the movement, that are a part of Comicsgate. And if you come out with this, project that has to be classified as non-Comicsgate, well, you're going to lose a lot of that support, a lot of that help, and that could matter a lot in the long run. And finally on this point, because Comicsgate as a movement isn't clear yet on what they mean by no politics in comics, that's why, as I said above, I'm going to give social justice warriors an actual context here, the benefit of the doubt on this one, and take them at face value on this issue, even though most of them never address the main criticisms that Comicsgate levels at social justice warrior comics, like plots that don't make sense or have big gaps in logic, characters that are Mary Sues, and so on. On those issues, they just dismiss us as racist, sexist, and homophobic. Okay, so back to the actual context video, and let's address some more of that.
Welcome to Actual Context, where we expose the anti-SJW grifters for the irrational, lying bigots that they are.
Actually, let's not. Okay, that's all for now. Until next time, have a very nice day.